Ocean Goat, thank you for a $5 super chat. Will the new QAV-S 2 frame be available in Squash Sticks or Deadcat to get the props out of view? Yes. It won't. So they make a Johnny FPV QAV-S and a JB QAV-S. The JB QAV-S is more for pure freestyle. The Johnny FPV is more for cinematic stuff. The Johnny FPV QAS V2 I think hasn't been announced yet, so oops, I'm spoiling it and leaking it, but I don't care. The Johnny one will have props out of view and be made more for use with the O3 Air unit, sort of in a pure, without a GoPro. The JB one, so for people who are like, why wasn't the JB QAV-S soft mounting the O3 camera? Well, it's because I wanted it hard mounted, and that's more durable, and I seldom use stabilization, and when I do use stabilization, I'm running a GoPro. So like that use case didn't occur to me when I was thinking, what do I want out of this frame? It's my signature frame. I designed it for myself, and if you like the way I designed it, you can use it. But on some degree, people were a little annoyed. Well, they were annoyed that it said optimized. They really didn't like the word optimized on a frame. So fair point. But the reason mine doesn't have soft mounting on the camera is because that's just not a use case that I really care about, and it's the frame is made for me and you, if you also like my priorities. But you're not out in the cold. The Johnny FPV one is going to have the same arm mounting and be very, very similar in style, but we'll have props out of view and we'll have soft mounting for the camera and all that stuff. So that's the answer there. Let's see here. We got a question. What's this question from Sep? Blunty, should we get that question before Sep goes and gets a... Okay, here we go. Do you guys think that the microchip industry starting back up in the U.S. will bring any domestic flight controller or ESC manufacturers? Sep is a patron over in the Discord server. Thank you, Sep, for your support. I mean, we could imagine that it might, but here's the thing. So we know that there has been a move to bring microchip manufacturing back to domestic sources. Certainly in the United States, there was some legislature passed to help boost the microchip industry in the United States, because the U.S. realized, especially, I think it started in 2020 when there was a disruption in the global supply chain. Please don't argue about, please don't start the crosstalk about conspiracy theories and nonsense. Please don't. Let's just stipulate that let's observe that there was a disruption in the global supply chain in 2020, and let's not talk about what it was. Or argue about what it might have been, or what you really think it was. And a lot of countries, not just the U.S., decided that maybe the ability to make local microchips in their country was desirable. In addition, we've seen some tensions and concerns that there may be military strategic importance in not having to depend on a potentially hostile country to give you all the microchips that you need to make your consumer goods and weapons. So the question is, will it bring domestic flight controller ESC manufacturers? And the answer to that question is no. I'm going to just be bold here and say no. And here's why. Excuse me. Y'all are cheap as shit. Y'all are cheap. You don't want to spend freaking any money. Me too. I'm also cheap as shit, but it's funnier if I sound like I'm yelling at you, the viewer. FPV hobbyists are so cheap. So many times in my life, someone has come to me and said, hey, I have a great idea to make the FPV hobby more accessible to beginners, easier, and it's going to cost just a little bit more. And I was like, nobody's going to buy it. Nope. They will all complain about how expensive it is and buy the cheaper thing that is worse. The FPV customer will always will usually buy a worse product that is cheaper. That's just how we are. So, do you think that chips made in the United States will be cost competitive with chips made in China? No, not possible. Because labor in the United States is always as little as we pay workers here in the United States. And it's pretty preposterous how little we pay workers in the United States, especially given what's happened with the cost of living in the last 3 years. Separate rant, not really relevant to my live stream. As little as we pay workers in the United States, it is way more expensive to pay workers in the United States than it is to pay workers in China. It's more expensive to manufacture in the United States. We have these things called environmental regulations that raises, as laxly as they are enforced, they still exist. The thing is, we could be manufacturing flight controllers in the United States right now, and for the most part, we're not doing it. Nothing is stopping someone from buying microprocessors from China, shipping them to the United or Taiwan, wherever, shipping them. Ooh. We're not going there either. What do you mean, Bardwell? Taiwan is a part of China. Why would you make that distinction? We're not going there. And Blunty, is this the part where you would hit the mute button if it were Luke and Linus?
Yeah. Or I would be looking at you with that face.
That face that Luke makes when he's sad that he can't make Linus shut up. Okay, anyway. Nothing is stopping anyone from buying microchips from somewhere else, importing them to the U.S., and making PCBs here in the U.S. No one's doing that. Actually, that's not true. Brain FPV does that. Very, very few people do that. Why don't they do that? So if we manufacture, it's not the importation and manufacturing of the microchips that causes there to be no domestic manufacturing or very little domestic manufacturing of flight controllers. It's that y'all are cheap bastards and you want to pay the least amount possible. And the way to do that is to manufacture the entire damn thing in a foreign country. So what needs to change is we need to be able to manufacture cheaper in the United States, which would be bad because it would mean a further reduction in worker wages, worker quality of life, etc. Or it needs to be more expensive to import products from outside, which would require tariffs, which would be bad because people would not like that because y'all are cheap motherfuckers who don't want to pay for things. So, anyway.